Hello, Haile. Thank you for joining Birmingham Global Shapers. It's really a pleasure to have you here with us today. And we're honored that you've chosen to become a Midlands mentor. And so we're hoping that the video that you share would inspire a lot of young people in the Midlands, especially Birmingham, to achieve what you've done so far. So can you just tell us about yourself and what you do?
Sure, thank you for that kind introduction. So yes, my name's Haile. I was born in Birmingham. I grew up in Aston. I went to Aston Manor School. And then from there, when I graduated, I went to Cambridge and studied politics, psychology and sociology. It was a big difference moving to Cambridge and being around very different types of people, and I can go into that later. When I graduated, it was in the middle of the recession around 2010, 2011. There were very few jobs around. So I spent a while hunting and I ended up working as an analyst in London. I worked for a range of public and private sector firms. So I worked with organizations that were supporting young people to exit unemployment and supporting young people to, overcome a life of crime. My focus was on using data analysis to help those organizations. I also worked at The Gap, the clothing firm, a very different role doing forecasting. That didn't really suit me. And so I decided to come back into the sort of public sector space. I currently work for the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy as a senior policy advisor. I do 3-month projects. So myself and my team, we parachute into critical areas and support teams to achieve some key objective over that short time horizon. So I've worked on coronavirus loan policies. I've worked on EU exit, leading negotiations with the devolved administrations of Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, helping to think about how we devolve trade policy in the future. At the moment, I'm working on COVID vaccinations and making sure that we have a long run supply of those going out way into the future. Before joining Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, I was at Department of Health. I actually worked with Chris Whitty, who's a Chief Scientific Advisor. He's on TV now, which is
yeah.
And I also worked for the Ministry of Justice, which is where I met you.
True. I think one thing a lot of young people that I've interacted with don't seem to know is what happens within the public sector, especially the civil service. It's always people don't know if there are roles for them to explore in terms of being innovative, going out there to execute projects. So I like that you've moved around across a lot of departments actually, and you've worked on a lot of projects. So what would you think is the most inspiring thing about your job, and what would you say to young people interested in this sector?
Sure, the civil service is great. It's 400,000 plus people up and down the country. There's a huge variety of roles, everything from frontline work, say on the border or in job centres, to stuff that's working with ministers like myself, working on policy, so helping make decisions that will shape the lives of every individual in the UK. There's also profession-specific roles. So for example, in law or in analysis, finance, there's a whole host of roles. I think that's one of the most exciting things that I would say to people. Joining the civil service is really a gateway to try out lots of different areas, lots of different sectors, and really find what you're interested in and build skills there. In terms of what inspires me about my role, it is the fact that the work that I do impacts so many people. So I mentioned the coronavirus vaccines program, that is tremendous. My understanding is that so far that program saved about 10,000 lives, is estimated. So that's huge, and I guess I'm glad to be a part of that journey. Before this, I was working on a program called Help to Grow. That is providing £600 million of support to businesses to help them overcome the coronavirus. So training and also opportunities to get subsidized technology. So, these are big projects, and it's great to see the work that I'm doing in the newspapers and be able to talk to my family about it and think that my family are proud of me. So that's nice.
Yeah. To be honest, so I worked in the development sector before joining the civil service, and you really underestimate how much impact people make within the civil service, because it's not very, there's not a lot of publicity that goes around your work as a person, because obviously you're a public servant. So it's quite, there is quite a lot of impact to be made there. And also, I'd say one thing someone said to me once, I won't mention any names, someone quite high profile, was that if you want to make a change, the best place to be is in the public sector, work for the civil service, because that's where the policies that are made that you challenge every day as a lobbyist, as an advocate, as, human rights activist. So why not just be in there when the policies are being developed, so you can provide good insights on how, they can be more inclusive, how they can more, impact more people's life. So I think that's what inspired me to join it as well. So far, how long would you say you've been in the civil service, and what has been your biggest obstacle so far?
So yes, been in the civil service for about 4 years. In terms of obstacles, I think I've been fortunate. I haven't faced too many obstacles so far. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of things I could mention though. So I think as I work in policy, so a lot of that is about thinking, do we need to change laws, regulation? Do we need to provide, say, financial stimulus? What steps do we need to take? Do we need to engage stakeholders in order to achieve X change in society? It's a very interesting field, and I guess there are some things that are always at the pinnacle of interest, and I'm always quite keen to be on those things, the things that are in the media, things that are most exciting. It's not easy to land those roles. I think that's my challenge coming up. How do I make sure that when there's an interesting policy in the department that I really want to work on it, that I find myself there? A lot of what I'm doing to address that is networking, trying to do more looking ahead, looking at what the department's planning over the next 12 to 18 months and making sure that I'm going toward the things that I think will be most interesting. So planning my career in that way. Because other obstacles that I could mention, I don't know if this has affected me personally, but I think it does exist, is challenges around race and gender in the civil service. Unfortunately, the civil service, especially the senior levels, are not as representative as they should be. That's something that the civil service really needs to overcome. I think it's going to take a lot of talented people joining, and they're making their skills shine, progressing up the ranks, and challenging acts of, say, discrimination or prejudice when we see them, in order to change that. The way that you and I met, Mariam, was that we were the co-chairs of Proud, an organisation, staff organisation in the Ministry of Justice, looking at doing exactly what I just described. So supporting colleagues from Black, Asian, minority ethnic backgrounds to achieve their best, and overcoming aspects of discrimination where we see them. It's a long, hard fight, but I think it is really important that we are fairly represented and fairly treated everywhere we go.
I agree. Which brings the conversation back to Birmingham. Now that we know, you and I know that we're trying to level up and decentralize a lot of the roles out of London into regions as well. We know we're having quite a few government departments coming into Birmingham especially. So what would you tell maybe someone in uni thinking about getting in? You and I know it's not very clear sometimes, especially if you don't have the experience. So what can they do? How do they start? How should they start preparing? What do they need to have? And the application process. Can you just talk them through it?
Sure. So there are many routes into the civil service. If you're, say, just leaving school, so say around 16, you could consider an apprenticeship. Those are opportunities to learn on the job. So you do, I think, roughly half the week in the department, and then you do the other half of the week at college to acquire a qualification. So there are apprentices, for example, in economics, studying economics on some days and actually being economists on the other days, which is incredible. You learn so much. And I believe you get a salary as well as an apprentice, which is fantastic. The other options, so let's say you've been to university, then you have options like the fast stream. So that is a graduate scheme. You can apply on it. The recruitment usually opens every year in about September. There's a whole host of different fast streams depending on what you're interested in. And really what you should do is try and get some work experience or do some work with a society, run some events at university, work with your family, do things that enable you to develop skills like, for example, working at pace or communicating well with others, leadership. Do things that allow you to demonstrate your skills, and then you'll have a wealth of things to write about in your application. Work experience is one avenue, but it doesn't have to be that. Like I've said, there are lots of ways that you can demonstrate the skills that you have. So, for example, one candidate I'm aware of talked about how she'd cared for her mum. I believe her mum got dementia, and she'd arranged a care package and actually physically cared for her mum, and used that as a powerful example. So there are many ways you can demonstrate that. As well as the stream, you can also directly enter the civil service. So if you go to the civil service jobs websites, every day there are hundreds of jobs posted up and down the country. And you can just apply for one, something that is relevant to the level of skill you have. The more you can put there, the more compelling your application will be. Do some research on the STAR technique. That stands for situation, task, action, and result. That's the way we like to see answers structured in the civil service. And you can find a lot of online resources and books about how to present your past experience in that way.
Oh, talking about STAR, Haile, before I got it, I mean, now I understand it, but before I got it, I could take my hair out, just dress, like, how? I know how to do this stuff, but I don't know how to say it in STAR methodology. So, it's quite simple, isn't it? But it's very tricky to nail all the behaviors, all the competencies. So where would you say would be the first place to look in terms of knowing how to nail that STAR? Are there resources on gov.uk that young people can access?
Yes, I believe there are. If you were to Google the STAR technique on gov.uk, you'd probably find some materials. I think reaching out to mentors or people who've worked in civil service is also another way of doing it. My experience is that people are very open. So, I've asked a lot, can you look at my application? Can I have a chat with you about my job? I'm available to have, those half an hour, 1 hour conversations, as are so many civil servants. You can find us on LinkedIn. You might have people in your network as well. You'll be surprised at how many people will say yes to a half an hour to talk through an application. There's a few books as well. If you look for books about competency interviewing or competency applications, that tends to have sections about the STAR technique as well.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I guess that's it. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I think you provided a lot of detail. Yeah. I wonder, it might be worth talking about like what are the backgrounds of people who come from the civil service, because I think there's some misconceptions around that.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that, actually. I forgot. So for me, I'd say there's pretty much everyone's dream job exists in the civil service. That's one thing I was surprised to find. The roles that you want in the development sector exist in the civil service. The roles that you want in STEM exist in the civil service. The roles that you want in business exist, but we just don't know. So how can people know about these opportunities? And is it by shadowing departments? Is it by, going for open days? Do those things exist within the civil service?
Yes. So there's a range of resources. If you're at university, look out for civil service road shows. They very often come to careers fairs. There'll be a number of civil servants there who can talk to you about their various career paths. Look on the civil service jobs websites as well. You can see huge ranges there. And there are professional websites as well. So there's the policy profession, the finance profession, and there's many other professions, and each of those have websites where they talk about the work that they do and the opportunities available. So yeah, I say Google is your friend. You know, as soon as you start to look, there's lots of resources that are on the gov.uk website, all about careers.
Yeah, and I'd probably say, and civil service staff networks are actually quite open now. They're available on social media. One thing is, don't be shy as a student to send a message and say, I'm quite interested in shadowing or finding a mentor within the civil service. These networks would be quite happy to arrange that, I'm sure. Like you and I know, we've been pushing, especially for inclusivity. And during some of our listening sessions, when we were co-chairs of the network, we'd find out that people from ethnic minorities sometimes don't feel confident enough that these opportunities are for them because of lack of representation. So what would you say to them? I mean, come on, Haile has got into, as a senior policy advisor / analyst, you've done incredibly well within such a short space of time, 4 years. That's really, really good in the civil service. So what would you say to them? How can they be bold and brave and go for it?
Definitely. I mean, I agree with that sentiment. I think the civil service is huge, and the backgrounds that people come from are so varied, especially in the cities. So London, Birmingham, Manchester, Nottingham. People come from massive range of backgrounds, including ours. They come from all sorts of walks of life. Been to university, haven't been. Lots of different life stories. Had careers outside the civil service versus just started their whole career in the civil service. So it's tremendous. And I would say yes. Look at what's available. Have conversations. Reach out, like you said, via the staff networks, via LinkedIn, via friends and relatives that you might have, and just ask questions and ask for opportunities. People are very open. I think that's one of the special things about the civil service, is it's a very friendly, welcoming, engaging institution. We want people like those watching the video to come into the organisation, and I especially want them to come and shake it up. So, I think.
Yay!
I think don't look at some job adverts and think, oh, this is not for me. They don't want people like me. You need X, Y, and Z. There will certainly be a type of position for you, and I think it's about having the conversations, understanding a bit more about what it's like here, and building the knowledge base that you're ready to apply for a role. I agree with the sentiment that I think sometimes people people from our backgrounds are not necessarily confident or comfortable. I think in some ways, maybe they think everybody talks like me. Like I risk talking like a robot sometimes. You're talking a more relaxed way than I do as well.
That's not true. No, I guess quite frankly, it's just having that preconceived perception of what it is. But it has changed quite a lot. I think in the last decade, it has changed. It's very innovative. It's open to ideas, open to change. It's something that I never thought I'd be in, but I am in, and I'm surprised at how different it is from what I preconceived it to be. So yeah, you're right. I started as a case manager and now a policy advisor. And that was my dream job, but I didn't start at that point because I didn't know that opportunity existed within where I am now. But when I got in, and it also rewards talent. So I got in, did my job right, and now I'm where I want to be. So there are all those opportunities for you as long as you make that first step. Yeah, not to be shy, ask questions, ask for help. Oh, I ask a lot. I know how to ask. So if anyone's listening and you feel like you want to ask questions further, then yeah, I'm sure you can send me a message. And if Haile's willing, would you like to hear back from anyone?
Yeah, let's find a way to do that, definitely.
Okay, so I'll end it now. Well, that was insightful, and thank you so much for your time, Haile. And I hope that anyone that is listening to this finds, some courage and know that the civil service or whatever public sector department is there for them to access. It's available for them, especially as young people. Don't think that you need to be in some type of way before you can get into this space. So you're welcome to explore the opportunities, welcome to connect with your mentors, your Midland mentors, Haile, welcome to connect with, networks on social media, staff networks, and just make that first move. And if you have any further questions, I'm sure we'll be happy to answer. But thank you for your time, Haile. This was really good. Thank you.
Great, thank you.